evening. Welcome to Fineprint. I'm Molly Kampir. We are starting off with a development this evening that comes as a big win for the Indian government. A UK court has ordered the extradition of Indian businessman Vijay Mallya. Mallya is wanted in India on alleged fraud and money laundering charges. The amount he's defaulted on is rupees 9,000 crores approximately, or $1.2 billion. The extradition notice, procedurally speaking, will now be sent to the Secretary of State of the UK. Vijay Mallya now has 14 days to appeal against the order. He faces a case of loan default besides allegations of money laundering and diversion of loan funds for purposes other than they were meant for. The tycoon was in self-imposed exile in London. He left for the UK in March 2016, taking advantage of the delusion in the CBI lookout notice against him. But that was exactly when the investigations against him started in India, and feeling the heat of the same, he left from the country in 2016. Now, the judge who delivered that judgment today said there is insufficient evidence that Mallya will not be tried by a competent and fair court. Remember, that was the argument made by the defense counsel. The judge said that Mallya will not face a trial by Indian politicians if extradited. He added that he finds no risk of justice being denied to Mallya upon extradition, and that there is no evidence of prosecution being politically motivated. Remember, Vijay Mallya had repeatedly said that the allegations against him were politically motivated, and the judge today rejecting those contentions that Vijay Mallya's legal team had put forth. Now, Mallya's extradition coming just a week after Augusta Westland middleman Christian Michel was extradited from the UAE to India, a major boost for the government as far as its steps to bring back Christian Michel and Vijay Mallya to India. India's Finance Minister Arun Jaitley had also tweeted welcoming the court's order. He tweeted, and I'm quoting, "Great day for India. No one who cheats India will go scot-free. The judgment of UK's court is welcome. An offender benefited during the UPA. The NDA brings him to book," is what the finance minister said. Now, before the court ruling, Vijay Mallya had given a statement to the media saying that the former employees of the Kingfisher Airlines are a priority for him. Mallya said that if the court accepts his settlement of dues offer, then the former employees should be paid first. Let's get in further perspectives now from our guest joining us this evening, Muthapandi Ganeshan, barrister law, joining us from London. Also joining us is our London Bureau Chief, Mandy Clark. Mandy, let me come to you straight first. You were there inside the court. Tell us what happened and how Vijay Mallya's body language looked like in the moments after the judge pronounced that verdict. All right, we'll just try and reconnect that line with Mandy Clark, but Muthapandi Ganeshan is with us. Let me begin by asking you, this of course is a long-drawn procedure that follows after the judgment that was delivered today. So help our viewers understand, procedurally speaking, what the next few days and weeks and months are going to look like.
Thank you. So in terms of going forward, today the senior magistrate has ordered extradition. What that means under the Extradition Act 2003 is that the matter now proceeds to the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State has an opportunity to consider any representations that may be made, and he has a very specific duty to consider if there are any objections to Mr. Vijay Mallya or Dr. Vijay Mallya being extradited to India. And the process is normally the person who's subject to extradition has 4 weeks to make any further representations, and the Secretary of State then has further 4 weeks to make the decision as to whether Dr. Vijay Mallya should be extradited or not. So really, the next 2 months is a critical period in which Dr. Vijay Mallya's defense team will have to make further representations if they so wish, but also at the same time they can make an initial appeal to the High Court.
So the next step, as we've been pointing out, will be the Secretary of State of the UK providing that rubber stamp for the next step to go forward. But Vijay Mallya does have 14 days to appeal.
That is absolutely correct. And the Secretary of State is not a question of rubber stamping. It is a question of going through the particular criteria under the Extradition Act 2003, which looks at factors like death penalty, looks at factors like whether the person has been extradited from a third country, and a couple of other factors. So it's really the question whether any additional material or additional information or representations that the Dr. Vijay Mallya's defense team would want to put forward in the next 4 weeks. So really, they have until 10th of January to put that forward. And then we have until 10th of February or the 11th of February for the Secretary of State, Right Honorable Mr. Sajid Javed, to make the decision as to whether Dr. Vijay Mallya should be extradited or not. But once that decision is made, then of course, if the Secretary of State is in agreement with the Westminster Magistrates Court that Dr. Vijay Mallya should be extradited to India, then of course the appeal process moves from the Secretary of State to the High Court to the Divisional Court.
All right, stay with me. I'll just come back to you, Muthapadi. Also getting in some reactions. Of course, this is a story that we've been tracking all evening and multiple reactions have been coming in. Let's begin by telling you what India's Finance Minister Arun Jaitley had to say shortly after that verdict came in. He took to Twitter to say, and I'm quoting, "It's a great day for India as the UK court orders extradition of Vijay Mallya." Jaitley then targeted the opposition Congress, alleging that the party benefited offender Vijay Mallya. Let's also take a listen in to what he said.
The judgment of the Magisterial Court in London extraditing to India an accused who has embezzled a lot of bank money and then sought shelter in the United Kingdom is a great victory for India. It's a victory for ethics and probity. It's also a signal to all that nobody can cheat India, its people, its economy, and then go hide somewhere in the world, and India will never be able to get at him. However powerful and important you are, the law is certainly above you. And wherever you hide in the world after cheating this country, India will find you out. And that is what seems to have happened.
Muthapadi Ganesan has been telling us more about what the procedure will look like over the next few days, weeks and months. It's going to be a long-drawn process, of course, Muthapadi, but you were telling us about the factors that the UK Secretary of State will be taking into consideration before going ahead and actually giving the formal signature on that court verdict today, which, of course, will be the first step in the several to come for Vijay Mallya to be brought back to India. Any time frame apart from the first step that we have in mind? How long before Vijay Mallya could actually be brought back to India? Of course, we're also looking at his appeal within 14 days.
Yeah, in terms of the time frame, is difficult to predict apart from the fact that we know they had the initial 4 weeks to make representations, which takes us into the 10th of January. Then we have further 4 weeks for the Secretary of State to make the decision. But assuming the Secretary of State also is in agreement with the senior magistrate at the Westminster Magistrates Court that there is no bar to extradition of Dr. Vijay Mallya to India, then what this means is that the matter then moves to the Divisional Court in London, and that is a process that could take anything between 6 months to 12 months. It really depends on whether Dr. Vijay Mallya and his legal team get permission to appeal in London.
All right. And as far as the appeal goes, of course, the argument that Vijay Mallya has had all along is that it's a politically motivated case against him. But he's also offered to pay back 100% of the principal loan amount. How seriously would that help, if at all, in his favor while filing that appeal? Because he's been making those statements repeatedly. He made that statement today as well while going in for that hearing.
That's an interesting point. But really, in terms of the appeal will be focused on the decisions that has been made by the senior magistrate that at the Westminster Magistrates Court. And that appeal will have to focus on the findings of the fact as made by the judge. And that was particularly in relation to whether there was a prima facie case of fraud, and also other arguments in relation to Article 3 and 6 of the European Convention on Human Rights, focusing on the prison conditions and also focusing on whether Dr. Vijay Mallya would get a fair trial in India, bearing in mind the allegations of political motivation. But the point that the court has made, and that's through the lengthy judgment that has been given, is that the court is satisfied on the review of the evidence that there is a prima facie case for Dr. Vijay Mallya to answer. And also the court is satisfied that the prison conditions are humane and that there is no bar in terms of political motivation of the request. And those are the matters that the divisional court will consider on any appeal. And the divisional court will hear, no doubt, arguments and submissions from Dr. Vijay Mallya's team as to why the judge has got her findings wrong. And we will have to wait and see that, how that is actually framed.
All right, Muthapandi Ganesan, stay with me before we just take the next step forward and talk a little bit more about the arguments that Vijay Mallya has been making. Just a quick roundup for our viewers who might just be tuning in. That is the big developing story we have been tracking for you. Vijay Mallya has his extradition has been ordered by that court in UK, as Muthapandi Ganesan, who's been dealing with extradition cases for decades now, has been telling us of the procedure that will follow in the next few days, weeks and months. The next step forward will be the UK Secretary of State actually giving the go-ahead for the next step. Vijay Mallya will have 14 days now to make that appeal. Muthapandi, also in terms of the arguments that Vijay Mallya has made all along, we have been, of course, talking about how he said that he did make it very clear that he is willing to pay up 100% of that principal loan amount. How strongly do you think, going back to the earlier point that you were making, will that really work in his favor, given your experience with extradition trials?
As I was trying to explain earlier, it is a question of, on appeal, whether the factors and findings by the senior magistrate at the Westminster Magistrates Court was wrong in law or in fact. That's the question. The issue about repayment of the monies is a subsidiary, or at least an ancillary issue. We will have to wait and see how Dr. Vijay Mallya's team pen any appeal that they want to bring forward, and also the factors in which they lie.
All right, so procedurally speaking, that's a time frame that we're looking at, Muthapandi, but of course, given your experience, this is going to be a long drawn process, isn't it?
And take appropriate steps thereafter.
The extradition of Dr. Vijay Mallya, no doubt the matter then proceeds to the two judges will hear the appeal. That's on the basis that a assumption permission is going to be given for that to happen. But in terms of what happens after that, the appeal process can easily take anything between 6 and 12 months for the divisional team. But also the matter of attention. If an appeal is given from the divisional court on a point of general importance.
All right, Muthapandi, I request you to just hold that thought there. A bit of an audio glitch as well in your line. While we reconnect the same, we also have our London Bureau Chief, Mandy Clark, joining us on the broadcast. Mandy, you were there inside the court when the judge pronounced that verdict. Tell us a little bit more about how Vijay Mallya responded in the moments during which the judge was reading out that order, what his body language suggested.
Yeah, well, it was a moment of high drama. The court had been waiting for over 2 hours before she showed up. The judge then entered the courtroom and almost immediately said, I order your extradition. There was an audible gasp in the gallery. It was just so matter of fact. He remained fairly stony-faced. Then she kind of went through a truncated version of her reasons why and handed a rather thick version of the verdict and her arguments. The language she used was also quite colorful. She didn't believe there was a conspiracy that the bank, that he was working with bank people to defraud. Instead, she said they were probably dazzled by this bejeweled playboy billionaire. And language like that really kind of shows what she thought of Vijay Mallya's behavior and what he's been accused of. So it was a very interesting court case. He did stay pretty stoic throughout, not a lot of emotion, and then she, then in all likelihood will be facing appeal. But there was a lot of tension in the courtroom when the verdict was delivered.
Right. Stay with me, Mandy. Just a quick listen in now to a reaction that also came in from Vijay Mallya just a short while ago. Let's take a listen in.
If I have a message for the Indian government, I can write to the Indian government. I don't think it would be very appropriate for me to pass messages to the Indian government via the media.
Why did you
Are you still
to
prepared to
say
back the banks and to pay the employees?
If they began negotiations,
You said that that has nothing to do with the order today?
While the legal battle is on, if they were to make a negotiation or try and recover the money, would you cooperate, Mr. Mallya?
I have already filed a comprehensive settlement application in the Karnataka High Court, who has kindly agreed to consider the settlement application. And as I said before to you, I put my assets on the table, asked the court to decide on a settlement, pay off employees and creditors.
Mr.
You
Jaitley
just said,
has
Mr. Mallya, a short while back that paying the employees is your first priority. Does that remain your first priority despite this order?
Mr. Jaitley has tweeted that nobody can cheat India. Do you have anything to say to him at all? Considering he is your former colleague and a friend.
And you met him, you said
He
before.
hasn't addressed a tweet to me, so I don't see why I should comment on it.
Mr. Mallya,
is paying back your employees still your first priority? You said a short while back that is your first priority. Will this have any bearing on that, or does that remain your priority?
That is a priority, my friend, because the amount payable to the employees is very small as compared to the banks.
When you say small, how small?
We have applied to the court on 2 different occasions in the last 2 years, specifically asking court's permission to use monies deposited with the courts to pay employees. We did not get the permission, but anyway, it also forms part of our settlement offer now, where we are requesting the court to make a comprehensive settlement to the employees as well as to the creditors. Okay?
So if the employees haven't been paid, is it the courts that are responsible?
The lawyers are going to decide that.
Do you think there's a question that the CBI might still be called into question, their integrity?
Sir?
Do you think the integrity of the CBI may still perhaps be called into question? Could that be one of the planks of your appeal, given recent events?
Jonathan, let the lawyers decide what we are going to do and what we are going to do. Basically, after they have reviewed and after they have decided on the way forward and the law points to bring, you will know, because the judicial process in this country, as you know, is public.
Okay. You seem very calm though, despite the events. You seem incredibly calm. We were fairly shocked by this. And you seem the calmest person here. There must be a thought in your mind that the events have gone against you now.
You know, enough of questioning on what I feel.
But Mr. Mallya, what are you expecting this?
Enough questioning is what Vijay Mallya says to those line of questions that were put forth minutes after the verdict came in from the UK judge ordering his extradition to India in that money laundering and diversion of funds case. Mandy, our London bureau chief, was right there inside the court while that verdict was being pronounced. Mandy, you were telling us how Vijay Mallya responded to that verdict while inside the court. We just heard from him as well. This is what he had to say. But what have you been able to gather so far from his legal team on what his strategy is looking like? He does have 14 days to make that appeal.
Well, we didn't get a lot, but the legal team were pretty tight-lipped. But it did take him a while to lead the court case. Now, normally after any time he has been in court, he leaves kind of moments later. He did have a long day. He sat in a consultation room with his legal team, going through that verdict. It took over an hour for him to leave the courtroom. So clearly they are already planning their next move. He did also speak to some of the journalists while we were waiting. He commented that this is not the last thing. He was commenting about how the Indian media have picked it up, and obviously there's always the appeal process. So he hinted that he'd be looking for an appeal that was not that was before the verdict, but in all likelihood that will be the next move by his defense team.
Tuesday, results of assembly elections for 5 Indian states will be out. It's being dubbed as a semi-final before the 2019 general elections, and the results are expected to set the tone. Why are these election results crucial? What impact will they have on 2019? And will they have any bearing on Narendra Modi's chances in the elections next year? We answer those questions in the next 3 minutes for you.
In less than 6 months from now, a new government will take over in New Delhi. Will Narendra Modi be granted a second term as Prime Minister? That's the question on everyone's mind. And December 11th could help in answering that question. Results of assembly elections in 5 states will be declared on Tuesday. It is being touted as the semi-final. Why? Because it is the last election before 2019. These 5 states contribute immensely to the Lok Sabha, 83 seats to be precise. Madhya Pradesh contributes 29 seats to the lower house of parliament, Rajasthan 25 and Chhattisgarh 11. 17 Lok Sabha seats come out of Telangana and 1 out of Mizoram. Winning Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan and Chhattisgarh, which are seen as BJP bastions, is important for the party to keep the momentum going for 2019. These elections are also crucial because there is a lot at stake for Narendra Modi. Losing Hindi-speaking bastions would dent the Prime Minister's image ahead of 2019. If Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh and Rajasthan slip out of BJP's grasp, it would mean Hindutva didn't work. Personally, for Narendra Modi, retaining these bastions is important to keep the Modi magic aura intact. And for Modi and Amit Shah, the 2 star campaigners of the party, winning these 3 seats would indicate that they can translate popularity into votes. For some, these election results would prove to be a watershed moment. For the BJP, ruling more than 19 out of 29 states would mean cementing its hold. It will give them the required boost ahead of 2019, and it will also re-emphasize the strategy of the Shah-Modi duo. These elections are equally important for the grand old party, which seems to be questioning its survival and leadership. For the Congress, wresting control of any of the 3 BJP bastions would be a big morale booster ahead of 2019. It would be a stamp of approval of Rahul Gandhi's leadership, one that is often questioned even within the party. It will also improve the image of the Congress party, which was on a losing streak in the last few assembly elections. These results will be a curtain raiser to the general elections in 2019. It will gauge the nation's mood, and both the BJP and the Congress need the boost going into election year. Bureau Report, World is One.